Where do you start if you've never painted miniatures before? What up, Mini family? Say you just bought Zombicide and you want to improve your gaming experience by painting the miniatures. Where do you start? Well, I think the first thing you should look at is last week's video where I discussed tools and supplies you need for getting started. But if you're beyond that, how do you start by putting paint on a miniature? Some people will say that it's a good idea to start by painting miniatures that you don't really care about. While this is okay advice, I think a better idea is to take the acrylic paint that you own and to play with it on a palette, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. The first thing we're going to explore is paint consistency. Let's take an arbitrary miniature branded acrylic paint straight out of the pot and examine its brushstroke. Notice how the brushstroke ends quickly and you can see the actual brushstroke. When we apply thick paint like this, it's very opaque, you oftentimes go back to the pot for more, and it can obscure details. Now let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Let's water down our paint too much and see what happens. The brushstroke goes for much longer, it's more translucent, and we can no longer see any sign of a brushstroke. If we apply over-thinned paint to a miniature, it runs to the details and poorly covers everywhere else. If we shoot for somewhere in the middle, we get the best of both worlds. Opaque, even coverage that doesn't require frequent trips back to the paint pot. Let's take a step back and talk about the brush itself. When you load the brush up with paint, you want to make sure you only load up half the bristles in an effort to not get paint in the ferrule of our brush. Dried acrylic paint in the ferrule is the quickest way to a dead brush. We want to avoid that as much as we can. When we draw the brush in a line, the majority of the paint deposits where our brushstroke ends. Think about how you can use this to your advantage. Another thing to consider is that the more we push the brush down, the wider the line becomes, and vice versa. We're always pulling the bristles, never pushing them. There's a fantastic article that goes into great detail about this very subject on volumere.com. The link is in the description below. Let's explore the translucency of acrylic paint over a variety of base coats. We explored this in nerdy detail in a previous video, so if you need more info, be sure to check it out. Note how the white undercoat makes the paint more vibrant and the black makes it much darker. The more coats of paint you lay down, the less noticeable the effect of the undercoat is, but you need a serious amount of coats to make the effect go away entirely. Let's check out how various colors mix. Here we have three primary colors, yellow, red, and blue. If we mix two of these three colors together, we get secondary colors that we're all familiar with, green, purple, and orange. If we take two colors that are opposite each other and mix them, we get a muted color. These relationships between colors are the tip of the iceberg of a very, very complicated subject called color theory, and they're valuable to know, especially if you want to paint on a budget. Instead of buying 30 paints, you could buy 4 or 5 and mix the rest. Understanding the principles of acrylic by playing with your paint is very valuable and will make your first miniature painting experience go much more smoothly. If you want to spend more time in the learning phase, let's explore a common activity that art students do while they're going to school when they study how volumes affect highlights, the sphere exercise. Pick a color and paint a sphere and highlight and shade it according to its shape. A spherical object will have circular highlights. This exercise should open your eyes to the fact that the shape of the object you're painting dictates the shape of the shadows and the highlights, and it's worth further research depending on the object and material you're painting. These main categories are good subjects to get a handle on before you start putting paint on miniatures. Becoming acquainted with your tools and supplies is a good way to ensure you're not discovering a whole new world on your first expensive miniature project. Speaking of you guys, let's check out the community highlight for this week. This week we have Vampires from Alex K. I absolutely love vampires, so as soon as I saw Alex's bright and beautiful Games Workshop Coven Throne appear in my miniature submissions, I knew I had to put it in the video. Thanks for the submission, Alex. If you want to see pictures of one of your miniatures in my videos, check out the description below. If you guys know someone who's afraid to start painting, consider sharing this video with him or her. Maybe it'll give them the courage they need to get started on their very first miniature project. Thanks for checking out my video, but more importantly, go paint some minis. X-Acto knife. Perfect for scraping away mold lines off of your bits and bobs, slicing through the occasional sprue, and slicing thick flesh.
Moving heavy.